Gracious God, walk with us in our life's journey, that we may be inspired by those who have gone before us as ancestors of our faith, to embody the call to justice that you ask for us in our day. May you be worthy to follow you. In Christ's name, amen.
Amen.
Please be seated. Here we are in the midst of 3 days that are kind of known as the All Hallows Triduum. But we don't really necessarily lift it up that way too much anymore. But in the old Church of England, there was a sense that there were 3 days in the sort of change to the fall season that had become known as a time of remembrance. There was first All Hallows Eve. When we look at where that's become Halloween, we know that in the older style of English, it used to be Hallow apostrophe in. So All Hallows even. It was the night before celebrating All Saints. And All Saints celebrated the people who had gone before in the faith tradition, like martyrs, apostles, all of those that we hear about in the New Testament. All of those who've gone before, who inspired the pathway of that faith. And all of those who suffered for the faith in the early church. And then the third day of that Triduum, we have All Hallows Eve, we have All Saints, and then we have All Souls Day. And All Souls Day remembers all of those people that have been known to us, or in other aspects of our faith tradition that perhaps were, Anglican clergy and others who were important and foundational to how our faith tradition took its shape. And so in that All Souls Day, we also have other cultures around us that are kind of doing that same idea, remembering ancestors. And even my brother, who currently lives in Poland, does what is the tradition there, which is going to your cemetery where you have family buried, and kind of cleaning up the area around the graves and maybe bringing some flowers and lighting candles at night. That idea that a candle still burns in the night is an image that reminds those who mourn that there is something still eternal about that person who we have lost from this world, who has died, that remains with us and is shining in us, through us, and supports us even in our darkest times. And that light within us is intended to reflect the light of Christ that's reminded to us in the Paschal candle that was first lit in the early part of this year at the Christmas Eve service. In that midst of that deep night of, I think I said Christmas Eve, I think I meant to say Easter Eve, my apology. In Easter Eve service, the whole thing about that is we're in the deep part of the night of Easter Eve when we sort of do that at the Easter Vigil. And again, out of the darkness, we kind of light this flame and we bring it in. And I don't think it's any accident that our kind of year here has 2 bookends, where we have a Triduum of days during the Holy Week of Easter, and then we have a Triduum of days here again at the turning of the year and the cycle of the year, that are sort of this All Hallows moment, this Hallows Triduum, where we're really asked to deeply go into that same sense that is reflected back in the Triduum, which is a little bit asking the question, there was a time of 3 days when Jesus was not upon the earth, or that God was not present in that way. And the early church reflected and said, well, where was he? Well, he was dead to this world. Where was he? And so in early theology said, well, he was down liberating people from hell. And again, I always like to remind people, if that's the case, there's nobody there, so stop trying to send them. Because it's not, the gates are broken, there's nobody there. Okay? But really, this idea of liberation, and in the sense that even in the midst of our darkness, there is something much more profound going on for us that we don't understand at the time we're experiencing it. I know that when I've been in the deepest parts of mourning or feeling very bereft or uncertain or frightened, whether those are economic circumstances or health circumstances or that loss of someone we love. In all those times of deep darkness, it is very hard to really get in touch with this light and to remind ourselves that our promise in our baptismal covenant is that we will continue to have faith in it. When all is dark, we as a community of faith are asked to be light for one another. Whether that looks like just the quiet presence of a comforting friend who doesn't need to say anything but is willing to be beside us in our morning, or whether it is listening for others who've been through that kind of journey to give us a little bit of hope that it's hard now and we will go on. And when we're mourning, we know now in our culture that it really is bad advice to say to somebody who's lost someone, you should rejoice, they're in heaven, right? But you just kind of want to say because it doesn't really value or respect where we are emotionally. And the walk of faith isn't leaping from joy to joy. There is a valley to go into that we cannot get away from in that walk of faith. And walking in those times is some of the most sacred times to remember, like Psalm 23, that God is with us in those times of the dark night of the soul, as St. John of the Cross used to talk about. And here we are in this Triduum of All Hallows, sort of getting ready to walk into holiday times. So the first thing I would say about that is in the old church, this day of kind of remembering those that we loved who died was also commemorated by making soul cakes, these little cookies, sort of shortbread, but they were specific. They had like a little dried fruit in them and maybe some nuts. And specifically in England, soul cakes might contain kind of crushed hazelnuts, which were associated mystically with the heart of God, that we know from St. Julian of Norwich, talking about all that God has made as being the size of a hazelnut in her vision. And then it might also have like dried currants or little pieces of dried apple. All of those things were what was happening at that time of the year in the Northern Hemisphere for them, where the last harvest that they did was the harvest of nuts and final berries that might still be on the bushes. And then they would give thanks for that final harvest as part of getting ready for the long winter to come. Because in the winter, you weren't going to be planting or harvesting. You were trying to get ready to sustain yourself and your family through those dark times, so that you would be able to basically come out of your homes with the spring and start doing the whole cycle again. So that cycle of life that's represented, whether it's in soul cakes or in this Triduum of All Hallows, that cycle of life is something that when we do Easter, we're really glad to be done with Holy Week. If you're someone who goes to all of those services, Easter service can mean so much more because we really have gone down into that deep valley together with Christ. So that when we come out through the Easter Vigil and out of the darkness into Easter morning, we really have a sense of resurrection and the promise of joy. But here we are in this time, intentionally being asked to reflect on the ancestors of our faith during this Triduum. We're asked to reflect on those people who have died, who we have loved, and we're asked to intentionally remember them. That's hard work, but how important is it, I think, as a preparation to a holiday season that includes Thanksgiving and Christmas and New Year's. Holidays are things that culturally we celebrate with family and with friends. Sometimes when we have people who have died, who help make those things so special for us in the past, then we can get these pangs of nostalgia and feel complicated about how we celebrate those holidays. When there are empty chairs around the table at Thanksgiving, or when people who make Christmas so special are not there, and suddenly we find ourselves holding the traditions for our families. Sometimes that kind of entering into remembrance of our loss can really make us upset with ourselves or uncomfortable to share that kind of vulnerability. And yet Jesus himself had that vulnerability in the death of his friend Lazarus, in kind of foreseeing what it would be like for him when he would die in his mortal life. And yet how necessary that was and a part of all the cycle of God's plan. And when we reflect and contemplate our own mortality, I don't know anyone who says, yippee, when we ask you to do that. I don't have people skipping into my office, for example, getting ready for their own funeral. Usually what happens is I have family members come in my office after someone has died, and they're asking the question, what do we do next? What happens now? We're getting a service together, for example. What do we need to have in order? And then all the questions come that we really should have been working on together as families in the years leading up to it. But I know it's hard. I know that from personal experience when I had to sit down with my dad several years before he died, but I realized he was getting older. He certainly, knew that was happening. And I sat down and I had this paper and I said, will you maybe fill this out for me? He'd asked me to be his executor. And I said, I have all this other financial information, but I don't have information about you. And he looked at this paper and he looked up and he kind of narrowed his eyes and he said, you want me to die? And I said, no. I would like us both I would you to feel comfortable that I know what you need me to know and that I am comfortable because I have your last wishes. And so I don't know how you want to be buried. Now my dad, infamous agnostic as he was, never really gave a whole lot of thought to what was going to happen to his remains. And here's something interesting. You don't own yourself after you die. You don't own your remains. And even though you maybe wrote it all down and you sat with a lawyer, doesn't mean your family is going to do exactly what you said. Why? Because they own your remains. Yeah. And so what happens sometimes is some of the nuttiest stuff. Nutty stuff. I had people sit down in my office and I know clearly this person would have preferred to be interred perhaps in our columbarium or in a cemetery. And because it's not down on a piece of paper that anybody left with me or with them, the family decides, that's not really convenient. We love them and everything, but they're dead already, so we're just going to cremate them and throw them off a ferry. Into the Puget Sound. It takes 15 minutes. You can do it on the ferry that goes from Mukilteo to Plymouth. And I'm like, oh, okay, not do that. So it's to have these pastoral conversations with people about maybe what to do instead. And I know what the Episcopal tradition is about that. And if you've ever been to an Episcopal funeral, it's actually one of those beautiful services in our prayer book. And Doug Latham's father keeps saying that to me after every funeral he attends. Dick Latham says, everybody should come to an Episcopal funeral. It's the best service in the book. Because it understands how to frame the gift and privilege of someone's life. And it gives the opportunity to celebrate the legacy they are. And that they continue to be in people's lives. And many times when I'm doing a funeral sermon, I make a point of saying, I know you guys have inherited some of this person's characteristics. Who's the one that knows how to make a good joke? Who's the one that has that recipe? Who's the one that's terribly rebellious? Because here's the thing. When we are baptized into Christ, we know from the readings we've even heard today that we are baptized into an amazing spiritual and social rebellion. It's true, we don't think about it that way. We kind of think maybe it's an honorary halo that we're supposed to keep polished. Or maybe it's a get out of hell free card, depending on your theology. But really, we are being baptized into the life and death and ministry and love of Christ. And what we hear in the readings that we heard today is what that means is challenging the status quo. It means challenging kings. Did you hear it? That kings will be overthrown. It means challenging people who are really aligning themselves with power and wealth and status in society. society, and Jesus tried to break that down, and his apostles, who were so privileged, just simply because of who they were as males in that society. And he kept trying to kick their shins on that issue. He bathed their feet. Monday, Thursday, we celebrate that. And says, you guys are not above the King of Heaven. We're not above. But what that means is we have to keep challenging when human societies and constructs and leaders think they are. Oh, my friends, the scripture is terribly political. Do not think, and do not think that I will not stand up here every Sunday and preach that. And people who say, oh gosh, I wish you would. Do you understand the rebellion you have been baptized in? To challenge the status quo, to challenge injustice, to treat people with dignity and challenge those who don't. To feed the poor can mean challenging systems that keep them hungry. To heal the sick means challenging systems that keep them sick and don't help them be well. To help the poor means challenging the wealthy who would keep everything for themselves and want the poor. It's a rebellion of spirit that asks us to do it in this way that sometimes doesn't feel very satisfying when Jesus in the Beatitudes says, when people hate you and revile you and abuse you, don't do that. How much easier and perhaps more emotionally satisfying it would be not to do that. But this baptism we're baptized into asks more and better of us. To not be like those who do that and not be tempted into that, but rather to be the example of Christ's light and love in the world and to continue to inspire through that love and never be instruments of hate. It is hard work, and yet that is the recipe for how you become a saint. It doesn't ask for perfection. It doesn't ask for us not to feel angry. It asks us not to act on that, but to act instead, to choose every day to be loving and to say to those with whom we disagree or whom we see as part of the problem, to say, you choose that and I choose something else. Because I do not follow an earthly leader. I follow the example of Christ. All Hallows. But now, before I let you go from the sermon, I want to tell you that at the back of the church, I'm going to be holding up these. And these, for you, are one page only. I don't want you to die, but I want you to fill out your funeral form. In Christ's name.
Amen.